Shocking events seem to always have a place in the K-pop industry, with some being more serious than others, and one of K-pop's biggest tragedies happened in 2014, when fans were shaken by one of the most tragic and deeply personal events to ever touch an idol's life. At the age of 30, Super Junior's leader Leeteuk faced the unimaginable as his father and both grandparents were found deceased in their home. The first reports that came about the crime simply stated that Leeteuk's family members had been tragically found in their home, but within a day, the full details were made public, revealing an even more disturbing and painful reality. According to police, Leeteuk's grandparents were found lying in their bedroom, while his father was discovered hanging from a wardrobe door. A note was also found at the scene, which seemed to have been written by Leeteuk's father. Authorities later concluded that Leeteuk's father had been the one to suffocate his own parents, after which he then decided to bring about the same fate for himself. This already horrifying situation became even more tragic once the background behind it was understood, as the turmoil within the family was a key reason behind the events. It was reported that Leeteuk's father had been living separately from Leeteuk and his siblings since his divorce from their mother in 1998. However, things weren't going too smoothly for him, as he had eventually taken on the full responsibility of caring for his elderly parents. His father, so Leeteuk's grandfather, had developed dementia over the years, and things only became worse when his grandmother, who was initially taking care of her husband, had become bedridden with late-stage lung cancer and was also diagnosed with dementia herself. Make sure to follow the channel for K-pop content, and don't forget to leave your thoughts on these events in the comments down below. Leeteuk's father had been doing everything he could to take care of them both and be a dutiful son. However, the burden unfortunately became too much for him to handle. At the same time, his world was seemingly crashing down on him, as his business had also failed, meaning he was in debt for hundreds of thousands of dollars, which eventually led to the family's home being seized. Having no other choice, Leeteuk's father had planned to admit his parents to a hospital the next day, hoping they would finally get the professional care they needed. But just one day before the plan was supposed to take effect, things seemingly reached a boiling point as he made the irreversible decision to end all three of their lives, with his last written words being, "I will take my parents and go to heaven together. I am sorry to my children." Following the devastating events, Leeteuk, who was serving his mandatory military service at the time, was granted emergency leave to attend the funeral and make arrangements. Fellow idols, celebrity friends, and fans sent their condolences, filling the funeral hall with wreaths and messages of support, all while his agency, SM Entertainment, asked the public to allow Leeteuk and his family space to grieve in peace. This tragedy shocked fans around the world, not only because of the horror of the event itself, but also because it revealed a side of Leeteuk's life that had mostly stayed in the shadows. Long before this tragedy, Leeteuk had spoken occasionally about the hardships he faced growing up. On a television program in 2012, he admitted, "I was often being hurt and my parents would argue often. Father was just a scary figure to me at the time. He didn't grow up in the happy or privileged household that people might have assumed, given his fame and success as a K-pop idol." In another interview, Leeteuk revealed more about the emotional toll his upbringing had on his life, saying, "I felt bitter towards my father," and confessed that as a child, he often wished he had been born into a different family. His parents' constant fighting and his father's anger left him stressed and unhappy, which is why life growing up had actually been much harder for him than one would have imagined. What's even more heartbreaking is that while Leeteuk was achieving success with Super Junior, topping charts and winning over fans around the globe, his father was silently battling depression and financial ruin, which also greatly impacted Leeteuk's mental health. The contrast was painful as Leeteuk had to smile and perform for television, all while his father was collapsing under the weight of responsibilities he could no longer carry. After the eventual loss of his father and grandparents in 2014, Leeteuk didn't just lose 3 family members, he was left with an emotional burden that still shapes how he lives and sees the world today. In the years since, Leeteuk has also opened up about how this event only served to contribute to his own depression and the complexity of his relationship with his father. In 2016, Leeteuk gave a speech at a high school in Gyeongju with the title "There is no hope without despair," where he spoke candidly about his mental health struggles. He revealed that his depression began affecting him heavily while he was serving in the military, even before he received the devastating news. What hurt even more was the final message his father left behind. The last message left by Leeteuk's father included a line that would follow him forever, as it said, "Do you truly believe you achieved success all by yourself?" For someone who had worked so hard, endured so much, and fought to rise to stardom, those words were more than just painful, as Leeteuk had struggled with his father's approval ever since he was little. Many fans expressed how cruel it must have felt, with comments saying, "Glad he's doing doing better, but man, his father really said something that he's never going to forget, and I don't blame him at all for being so depressed. In the years following the loss, Leeteuk has occasionally opened up about how the trauma affected him. He has shared that healing is a slow and painful process, and that it's something he continues to live with. He revealed that after returning from the military, life didn't get any easier as his father's failing business had actually caused him to inherit an unpaid debt of 5 billion won. Dealing with his new reality, Leeteuk had to take desperate measures as he sold his car and took on every job offered to him, which included hosting, variety, and guest appearances, not for his own ambition, but to pay off the massive debt left behind. During his speech, he also got into how hard a celebrity's life can be behind the scenes, as they too can live filled with sadness and despair. His words struck a chord with many who understood what it meant to grow up in a dysfunctional home. For fans, it even explained a lot about Leeteuk's personality, his emotional openness, his constant work ethic, and the way he's taken on the role of caretaker not just in his family but in Super Junior as well. But even as he tried to move forward, it was clear that the pain never really left. In a YouTube livestream, Leeteuk opened up again about how the trauma still lingers and how he actually has a hard time existing in Korea because of everything that has happened to him. Honestly, the thought of trying something new on my own in Korea feels really scary and daunting now. I just want to stick with what I've been doing well, things like hosting variety shows, broadcasts, or gigs, keeping it stable and secure. He also admitted that his fear of the unknown keeps him isolated, something even the people around him have noticed, as he now tends to keep to himself a lot more. He's even gotten the question of whether he's afraid of all the things that can happen, something that he admitted terrifies him. For someone who has lived much of his life in the public eye, Leeteuk now wishes only for a quieter life, where he doesn't necessarily need to always be a leader, an entertainer, or someone who always has it together. He also heartbreakingly confessed how he wishes the world would see him after everything. I just want people to look at me and say, oh, he's doing okay, or oh, he's still alive, and leave it at that. In the end, it seems like the perfection demanded of idols, the weight of financial responsibility, and the stigma around mental health in Korea have all made it harder for him to heal. And yet, despite everything, Leeteuk still shows up. He still leads Super Junior, he still hosts shows, he still smiles in front of cameras even when he may be hurting inside. That in itself is a quiet act of resilience, and as he once said, the group activities and support from his members have helped ease his depression. But not every tragedy happens in the spotlight, as some never even make it that far. The K-pop industry is scary and unforgiving and has unfortunately cost a lot of lives. Many idols tragically ended their lives due to the relentless harassment and pressure they faced. Sojin is a less-known victim of the harsh realities of the industry, but her story is just as important. Sojin was known as a contestant on the Kara project, which was a survival show featuring the girl group Kara and was broadcast on MBC Music in 2014. The program aimed to find a new member of Kara among the DSP Media's trainees after Nicole and Ji-young had left the group. With only 3 members left, the company couldn't afford to disband the group at their peak, so instead they decided to make their trainees compete for a spot. The show itself, especially compared to other survival shows that are airing today, was pretty boring and uneventful. The contestants had to complete 5 missions and perform different Kara songs live on stage, with the judges giving their evaluation afterward. But even though to viewers this was just another survival show, for these girls it was the last chance to debut, so the competition was brutal behind the scenes. They all stood out with their talents and skills, but unfortunately only 1 trainee would get chosen to debut in the group. The original plan was to add 2 members so they could fill out the 2 spots left by Nicole and Jinyoung, but in the end, the company decided to go with just 1 trainee, and Sojin was one of the 7 DSP Media trainees to compete in the show. She was the oldest contestant among the trainees at only 22 years old. Before Kara Project, she participated in Superstar K1, but she had plans to debut in a DSP Media group as she had been part of the company as a trainee for 5 years. However, her father was very vocal about how little he supported Sojin's dreams of becoming a K-pop idol, which added even more pressure on her to do well and eventually debut in Kara. At first, things seemed to have been going well. Since the beginning, she and Somin, who would end up debuting in April, were among the favorite contestants. Sojin was really mature and bubbly, and she had never failed to lift everyone's spirits. She was also given a leadership position early on since she was the eldest trainee, but even though it was a burden, Sojin never let it show as she kept going going on with the same enthusiasm. She was a winner in everyone's eyes from early on. She was talented, charming, and had visuals that would match the rest of the KARA members. Considering all this, imagine everyone's surprise when Hoyoung was crowned as the winner and was the trainee who ended up joining KARA. This was a heartbreaking moment for Sojin that shattered her dreams. Youngji's win was controversial in a lot of ways, and there were a lot of theories about it. She wasn't a part of the first 2 episodes due to health reasons, so people felt like her spot as number 1 was undeserving. Despite her talent and charm, some believed she shouldn't have won because she missed the first 2 episodes, unlike the other trainees who had been there for all 6. However, some said that this had happened because DSP Media didn't want the new member to possibly overshadow the current KARA members, and both Sojin and Somin had a fandom of their own at that point. Because of this, the public thought that Youngji was chosen to join the group because she wouldn't be as popular as Gyuri, Sungyeon, and Hara, and the group would still be complete. There were also rumors that her family was rich, but what mattered was that she was the one to debut, with Somin coming in 2nd place and Sojin coming in 3rd. After the show was over, the contestants went their separate ways. Somin, who came in 2nd, debuted as a member of April in 2015, but then left to debut as a part of KARD in 2017. Chaewon, who got 4th place, also debuted in April and was a part of the group until their disbandment. Chaekyoung, the trainee who placed 5th, did a lot before finally debuting in April. She took part in Produce 101 before debuting as part of the project groups SIVA and IBI in 2016. Then in 2017, she debuted in April. Shiyoon, who came in 6th, also competed in Produce 101, and Yuji debuted as part of Applebee after leaving DSP Media, and once the group disbanded, she debuted in Sodu Ai. Looking at how their careers unfolded after the KARA projects, we can assume that most of the participants were dealt with a bad hand. All the April members were involved in the mistreatment scandals and have been trying to rebuild their careers ever since. However, Sojin unfortunately had the most tragic end of all of them. One of the biggest concerns of Sojin throughout the show was her age. Even though she was only 22, she was the eldest of the trainees and had been there for 5 long years, waiting for the company to finally put her on stage so she could show what she worked towards all these years. And she had a lot to show too, as her skills were only enhanced and improved during the KARA project. However, she was unfortunately considered too old to debut, even though she was very young, as the average debuting age was 18 to 19. Because of this, KARA project was kind of an all-or-nothing deal for her. Either she would debut in this group, which would open the doors for her idol career, or she would fail, and all the time, money and effort she had put into debuting would go down the drain. Watching friends and fellow trainees progress in their lives by debuting, graduating, or finding jobs only added more stress onto Sojin's plate. After 5 years as a trainee and her father's disapproval of her career choice, the show's conclusion with her placing 3rd, not even 2nd, felt like her world had come crumbling down. Fans and viewers were still hopeful about both her and Somin. If they didn't end up debuting in KARA, there were still hopes that they would debut in a new girl group, or that DSP Media would form a group just to include the trainees that didn't make it. It made sense. They had built an audience and fan base through the show, shown their skills, and proven themselves to be worthy of an idol career. Even if DSP Media didn't want to debut her, there was probably some other company that would be desperate to get her hands on her and debut her in their new group, but everyone was expecting her to be a member or even the leader of April, and as you may know, this never ended up happening. In January of 2015, a few months after the show came to an end, Sojin left DSP Media without much noise. It was said that she went back home after the show ended, but overall, there was no official announcement on her departure, nor was it ever revealed what happened for her to leave. DSP said that they came to a mutual agreement to end her contract, but the general consensus is that the company terminated her contract without notice, a decision which was seen as questionable. Since Sojin was there for so long, you would think that DSP would know what they would be doing with her. While it's acknowledged that the industry is harsh and unforgiving and not all trainees debut, dedicating 5 years to a company should count for something. Keeping her there for an extended period, making her participate in the show, and having her build a potential fan base only to terminate her contract seemed like a problematic decision, and it was Sojin's last straw. According to her friends, she had been suffering from depression for some time at that point, so the termination of her contract completely destroyed her. She blamed herself for not coming in first on the show and convinced herself that the KARA project was her last chance to debut. So on February 25th, 2015, only a month after the termination of her contract, Sojin took her own life. Reports state that Sojin was discovered unconscious in a garden in front of her apartment complex. Even though she was sent to the hospital immediately and the medical staff did their best to save her, she did not make it. The police suspected that she jumped from the 10th floor of the apartment, but urged the public not to make any assumptions on why she chose to do this. This case is still known to be one of the most tragic ones, as Sojin was so young, full of hope and life. Just reading the things that her label mates said about her can bring you to tears and shed a light to a terrible aspect of the industry. Idols have been debuting young since the dawn of time. Icon Boa debuted when she was only 13, SHINee's Taemin, FX's Crystal, Hyuna, IVE's Wonyoung, and NCT's Jisung all debuted when they were 14, and BTS's Jungkook and Red Velvet's Yeri debuted when they were only 15. However, nowadays, despite the overall criticism, the age at which idols are debuting is decreasing severely. For male idols, it's more ideal for the company to debut them when they're younger due to the fact that they have to enlist at some point. Female idols encounter a challenge seemingly worse than military obligations: ageism. In the entertainment industry, women are often viewed as outdated by the age of 30, and in K-pop, female idols are deemed to be past their prime by 25. Therefore, debuting when they're younger allows them about 10 years before being labeled as too old, making it a more appealing prospect for companies. So despite the fact that Somin was literally just starting her life and was very young, she still felt like her career was over just because she couldn't debut at 22. Her unfortunate and tragic passing should have served as a warning to the industry when it comes to considering human beings as disposable, yet no changes have been made. Just how many people need to lose their lives just because the industry refuses to change their ways? And sometimes it's not just the idols whose lives are at risk.
The victims of Friday's accident
At least 16 people watching
among
and
700 people attending a pop concert at a
album
shop.
performance by a popular girl band, 4 Minute.
When on October 17th, 2014, the members of 4 Minute started to perform at a small concert in Songman, they had no idea that the beautiful night would turn into the most tragic moment of their career. 16 people who came to cheer for the group fell into a shaft and none of them made it out alive. This tragic incident marked the history of K-pop forever. How it happened. The tragedy took place in Songnam, a place south of Seoul, on October 17th, 2014. The special small concert of 4 Minute was held as a part of a festival at Pangyo Techno Valley. At the place of the concert, there was a ventilation shaft covered by a grate, which became the main cause of this tragedy. The concert had just started, but the fans of 4 Minute tried to see the girls perform from a better angle, so they got up on the shaft, which was a bit raised, and provided them with a better view. At first, it was just a few fans, but then from 700 people, about 30 fans climbed up the shaft and eagerly watched 4 Minute perform. Unfortunately, as the dedicated fans danced along and jumped to the beat of the music, the grate covering the shaft let loose, and these fans fell through. Around 5 p.m., they fell down 3 floors, and most of them took their last breath that very second. One fan who witnessed the whole tragedy spoke to reporters and shared, "There was a sudden loud screaming, and when I turned, it looked as if people were being sucked down into a hole." In pictures from before the accident, you can see that the grate covering the shaft was already getting loose and bending down as more people got on top of it. Although many reports from the day of the incident claim that there were from 20 to 30 people standing on it, The Fact, which is a Korean media outlet, reported that 25 people fell through the shaft. What comes as an even greater surprise is that 4 Minute and most of the fans present at the concert had no clue that the incident happened. Cube Entertainment, which was a label of 4 Minute, released an official statement regarding the situation in which they claimed, "There was no way to measure the amount of grief in our hearts. The members and the staff did not know what had happened during their performance and only learned of the incident on their way back to Seoul. We hope no more people get hurt because of this incident." At the time of this statement, 16 people lost their lives due to them falling down the shaft, and 10 people were seriously injured. Out of those 16 lives, 12 of them were lost immediately after the fall, 2 while being transferred to hospital, and 2 while receiving medical treatment in the hospital. To say that this was devastating is an understatement, because this accident occurred only 6 months after the Sewol ferry tragedy, which cost hundreds of lives of young people. And you can only imagine how shocked the Korean nation was when another accident happened. Who is to blame? Immediately after the tragic incident occurred, everybody wanted to know who's to blame and why this happened in the first place. Well, to understand the situation, we need to look at it from different angles. First, the fans were not supposed to climb the shaft as it was naturally a health hazard. But as we all know, the power of crowds is a real thing, and when one fan does something, more are to follow. That's how 26 people ended up standing on the shaft. But this is exactly the reason why there are many members of security present at concerts, because every performer and organizer knows that fans can do crazy things just to get closer to their favorite idols or see them better. Well, as it turns out, in this case, the security was really lacking. When the witnesses from the incident spoke to the media, they shared that there were no security guards present and that there was also no fencing or warning signs that would let people know that they cannot get up on the grate covering the vent. An eyewitness who was near the shaft when it happened shared, "Many people on the vent gratings were chanting and dancing to the music. I was worried about their safety, but there were no security guards around." However, there were some statements from the organizers who claimed that there were guards who warned people people. One netizen wrote, "This is tragic, but I really feel sorry for the ushers/staff that apparently tried to stop people from doing that. But this is contradictory to the statement of the eyewitnesses. Yonhap News investigated the incident a bit more, and when it happened, they shared, if it turns out that safety regulations were ignored, we would bring criminal charges against them." Apparently, the reason why the fans of 4 Minute ended up going up the vent wasn't only because they wanted a better view. The thing is that the organizers of the concert provided fans with only 400 places to sit on, and the rest 300 people had to either squeeze together or somehow find a place to stand at. And so they found the grate covering the ventilation shaft, which in fact led to an underground garage. After the tragic incident, the organizers of the concert were obviously questioned not only by the media reporters, but also by the police. The whole country tried to find out what truly happened that day at 5 p.m. while 4 Minute were performing. But as the safety regulations were broken and people suffered to the point of losing their lives, the organizers didn't know how to react. The government official who was in charge of the safety regulations of the event ended up jumping from a 10-story building, which obviously resulted in him passing away. He left a goodbye note to his family and to the public in which he wrote, "I am sorry for the victims. Please take good care of my children." This tragic incident once again underlined and highlighted South Korea's bad safety regulations, and it put pressure on the government to finally treat people's lives with respect and pay more attention to safety. Not only that, but many people found the situation hauntingly similar to the Sewol ferry tragedy. In fact, the chairman of the company that owned the ferry and was responsible for safety regulations was also found unconscious at his home after the tragedy happened, so the situation was almost parallel to the 4 Minute concert accident. The response from the public was truly heavy. The aftermath. We've talked about the number of casualties and what happened to the organizer, but what about 4 Minute? Obviously, the members of the group felt extremely guilty for what happened, and especially for the fact that they were unaware that this tragic accident took place while they were performing. Since they wanted to show their condolences and respect for the victims, the members canceled their scheduled activities at the time and other appearances that they had planned. For example, Gaeun and Hyuna were invited to various fashion events and fashion shows as a part of Seoul Fashion Week, but they both decided not to attend and think about what happened. A culture critic, Baek Jinyoung, spoke on this incident and said, 4 Minute members are also partly victims of this tragedy. Who would have known that they would suffer such an extreme level of trauma? All we, fans and media, need to do is pay more attention to them and give them a warm hand. Fans of the group showed their support for the members by writing comments and leaving them positive messages on their social media accounts. One netizen wrote, "Sewol disaster happened because people listened. Pangyo happened because people didn't listen." And another one shared, 4 Minute must be feeling guilty for no reason. Of course, this accident opened a heated debate among K-pop fans all over the world, not only in South Korea. Many blame the fans of 4 Minute for making the unreasonable decision of standing on the grate, but as I mentioned earlier in the video, that's why there's always security at concerts so they can warn fans from doing something that could result in serious injuries or other problems. One user on Reddit sympathized with the victims and wrote, "I can't even begin to imagine their last moments. No one deserves to go like this, let alone 16 people. Rest in peace." The incident actually opened a long-needed conversation about safety regulations at concerts in South Korea. The Korea Times published an article regarding the situation, and the author mentions 2 other cases when South Korea witnessed incidents like this at concerts. They talk about a 1992 accident when a teenager was crushed by 60 people at the performance of New Kids on the Block. Another case they mentioned is a 1996 passing of a person who was also crushed by a crowd of 5,000 people who wanted to get front seats at an FM radio show in Daegu. But the discussion regarding the hazards continued among fans as there were people who claimed that the government isn't solely to blame for this. One user wrote, "I don't think it's entirely private business and the government's fault. People in Korea also don't seem to care much about their own safety. Smoking is still ridiculously popular, people don't wear seatbelts, they leave no space in crowds, leaving a huge potential for someone to get crushed." It's hard to judge the people who suffered from this accident, but it's important to say that the South Korean government has since tried to enforce stronger safety regulations. When the incident happened, many K-pop fans pointed out that 2014 was truly a horrible year for K-pop, but not only that, it was also a tragic year for Korea in general, as many devastating events happened that changed the country's attitude forever. But the heartbreak didn't end there, as what happened next shook the entire industry. The accident that happened to Ladies Code shocked the world of K-pop. As their car slipped while they were returning from an event, 2 members ended up losing their lives, and the remaining 3 are still left with the traumatizing memories. For all of you that don't know, Ladies Code are a girl group that are under Polaris Entertainment. They debuted in 2013 with Bad Girl, and the original lineup consisted of 5 members: Ashley, Rise, Eunbi, Sojin, and Dooney. Though their success didn't compare to that of the groups that debuted at the same time, their releases still did pretty well, and they were respected in the industry. Then something horrible happened. On September 3rd, 2014, Polaris Entertainment released a statement about the members of Ladies Code getting into a car accident. The statement explained that they were on the way back to Seoul after attending the recording of the KBS Open Concert at Digest, as it was their last schedule of the Kiss Kiss promotions. Inside the van were the 5 members, the road manager Mr. Park, who was also driving the vehicle, one of their managers, and one of their stylists. Near Suwon, the back wheel of the car slipped off. To make things worse, the road was wet because of the rain, and this caused the car to tumble. The car rolled several times and hit the road divider, which caused a lot of damage to the roof and the side of the car. If that wasn't enough, the police, highway patrol, and the road traffic authority reported that the car was speeding by over 30 kilometers per hour above the speed limit in the Yeongdong Expressway. There were suspicions that the car carrying the members and the staff had a problem with the back tire, as it was suspected that it had fallen off, or at least this is what the manager of the girls, who was only referred to as Park, had claimed when he was questioned by the police. However, the police concluded that the back tire had fallen off because of the accident and was not the cause of it. There were also rumors that the accident was caused by Sosang fans. There's an infamous Sosang fan known as Kim Yo-jin, or mostly referred to as Selja, who was known for allegedly harming idols in various ways. It was rumored that she poisoned BAP's Himtan and put glue in Dobang Shingi's Yoonho's drink. There were rumors that Selja had also predicted that a popular Korean celebrity would pass away in 2014, and some even linked the accident to her. However, all the accusations against her are rumors, and especially the Lady Code accident one, so take these rumors with a grain of salt. The main cause of the crash was concluded to be going over the speed limit. Polaris Entertainment also revealed that the airbag in the driver and passenger seat were not open and that none of the members were wearing seatbelts. After the police investigation, Mr. Park was arrested in November of 2014 for causing the accident and eventually confessed to speeding. He also shared that he had called emergency services immediately after the accident happened. Mr. Park was sentenced to a year and 2 months in prison for causing the crash, as he had failed to reach an agreement with the family of the deceased before the trial took place. Therefore, the guilty verdict was handed down. Unfortunately, the accident ended up taking lives. Member Eunbi passed away at the scene, as it was announced by the company a few hours after the crash took place. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt when the car slipped. According to eyewitnesses, Eunbi was taken to the hospital after the accident happened, but unfortunately passed away as her injuries were too severe for her to survive. Other members also got injured. Thankfully, Ashley and Dooney only sustained minor injuries, but the others weren't as lucky. At the time, Rise was unconscious and in the ICU because of her critical condition. Sojin was also under critical condition, but regained consciousness and underwent surgery for the facial fractures that were caused by the accident. Polaris Entertainment said, "Sojin is recovering well from the surgery. When her condition improves, she will leave the hospital, but for the time being, she will be treated here." The agency also refrained from telling her about Eunbi's passing until she was stabilized because they didn't want to worsen her condition, so Ashley and Dooney were the only Ladies Code members present at Eunbi's funeral. Though she picked up on what was happening as she kept seeing family and staff members going around her in mourning attire. She even asked, "Why does everyone keep wearing black?" Eventually, she found out about Eunbi passing away by looking at the news on her phone. Ashley and Dooney were the only ones who stood by Eunbi's mother's side throughout the service and hugged her when she was crying. There were many idols present at the service, and others expressed their condolences. It was later confirmed that Eunbi wasn't removed from the vehicle when the accident happened. Fire department officials stated there were 3 girls, Ashley, Dooney, staff members standing outside the vehicle, and 3 girls who were in the vehicle unconscious, Eunbi, Rise, Sojin. Rise was bleeding from her head and had external injuries to her face. The situation was extremely chaotic, with Rise not breathing or having a pulse. We were forced to perform CPR on her right away. The bad news didn't stop after that. On September 7th, 2014, it was reported that Rise had also passed away. She had an emergency brain surgery after the accident and had been unconscious since. Polaris Entertainment said that because of Rise's head injury, she was moved to the hospital and received surgery, but ultimately passed away. She had 2 funerals. One was held in Seoul Memorial Park, South Korea on September 9th, 2014, and was attended by many idols. After the first funeral, Rise's body was cremated and then taken back to Japan for the second funeral that was held only for family and close friends. One of the most heartbreaking things about this was that Eunbi and Daesung were very close. At the dinner that took place the night of the accident, Eunbi was joking around and said, "We did well, right? Even after this album, Ladies Code will continue. No one will give up and say, 'I'm fine, thank you. It's not our last night, right?' Ladies Code fighting." Another devastating thing is that on August 12, 2014, Daesung talked to her fans on her Twitter account. A fan asked, "Which member of Ladies Code would you rather leave with you and feel very comfortable with?" To which Daesung responded, "Eunbi." A year after the accident happened on August 22, 2015, Ladies Code held a memorial concert in Japan to honor Daesung and Eunbi. This was because before passing away, the two deceased members were hoping to perform in Japan, a dream that was never achieved. This was the first appearance of the members ever since the accident. Along with Ashley, Sojin, Dooney, Young Dong-un, Sonu, Rumblefish, and Han Hee-doon also performed at the concert. The concert also marked the first performance of I Will Smile Even If It Hurts All, a tribute song to the deceased members that was released on September 7th, the day that Daesung passed away. All proceedings from the concert went towards a memorial project and other charity activities. The members spoke about the accident for the first time in 2019 and how it affected them. They appeared in an episode of Channel A's Eye Contact where Ashley and Dooney invited Sojin to discuss the accident and how it affected Sojong's birthday, which unfortunately was on the same day of the accident. Ashley explained that they talked about Eunbi and Daesung amongst themselves but have never spoken about what happened on the day of the tragic accident. Sojong then shared in a private interview, "After we did a broadcast that day, we went somewhere pretty far away to do an event. She started explaining that it had rained a lot that day and everyone had been pretty tired. They stopped somewhere to rest and Sojong went to the bathroom, but once she came out, the member surprised her with a cake made of choco pies with birthday candles on top. They sang to her and then apologized because they had limited chances of what to do for her birthday." Sojong continued, "I told them it was okay because we were busy and then I got in and we drove off. We were so tired, so I fell asleep on the way. To be honest, that's my last memory of that. I think I was probably taken to the hospital then." Sojong then went on to explain how she had been injured and how she and Ashley had found out about what had happened through the news and started crying. Sojong teared up as she recalled how nobody let her know what was happening and how that caused her great pain. To make things even sadder, she revealed that the members didn't eat the birthday cake they made for her because of their diets and how they wished that they had shared the cake together. The accident happening on her birthday affected her greatly and she hasn't celebrated it since. Sojong said, "After that day, I didn't think of September 3rd as my birthday. It wasn't a day for me to be congratulated. It would be strange to go see Eunbi in the morning and then have a birthday party in the evening, wouldn't it?" The girls went on about how they couldn't quite accept that the members were gone and how they felt like they had just gone on holiday. But the thing was very real and they couldn't even record or perform the songs the five of them had performed together without tearing up. They ended the interview by tearfully promising that they'd talk more about the accident in the future in order to move on. The accident is still one of the most tragic things that has ever happened in K-pop and the members are still affected, so I hope that they get to live the rest of their lives in peace and slowly move on. They've been through so much already. But tragedy in K-pop doesn't always mean loss of life. Sometimes it's a different kind of destruction. At the peak of her career, Baek Jinyoung was one of the most popular idols in the industry. She made her debut back in 1999 with her first album Sorrow and the title track Choice, which basically paved the way for K-pop songs using Latino beats. Following the success of her first album, she was quick to release her second studio album the following year. Rouge was an instant hit and managed to sell 360,000 copies in South Korea, cementing her name as one of the top singers in the industry when her career had just begun. She had a charming style that felt fresh to the audiences and impressive vocals that made her listeners go crazy. Her insane vocal abilities combined with her image put her into the spotlight, and despite all the backlash that she got, she still rose to the top. Baek Jinyoung kept releasing hit after hit and her popularity only kept growing. The song she released for the original soundtrack of the drama Secret Garden, titled The Woman, is what spread her popularity throughout Asia. It won the audience's heart and made them tune into the drama, winning Outstanding Korean Drama OST at the 2011 Seoul International Drama Awards. She released numerous soundtracks for Korean dramas like Love and Love Radong and The Magistrate, Don't Forget for Iris, and much more. This dubbed her the OST queen, as people loved hearing her voice whenever they were watching a new drama, and so did she. Jiyoung said, "I love to participate in producing music for soaps if I like the female lead after reading the script. It's a thrill to hear my song played during melodramatic moments in soaps." She also won multiple awards like the Bom song from SBS Gayo Daejeon, Seoul Music Awards, and Golden Disc Awards. awards. She also won awards for Best Female Artist and Best OST at the Mnet Asian Music Awards, alongside many other awards and nominations. However, her rising success came to a halt in 2000. In November of 2000, just a year after her debut, Baek Jinyoung was hit with one of the biggest scandals in the history of the K-pop industry. A video of her having inappropriate relations with her then manager and boyfriend Kim Si-won hit the internet on November 19th, and due to her rising fame, it instantly went viral, even with the limited resources they had at the time. A tech student managed to hack the website where the tape was originally uploaded and found out that at one point the video was distributed over 200,000 times in a single day. This made it accessible to nearly anyone who wanted to find it. Ji-young's career looked like it was over at the snap of a finger as soon as the video was leaked. The radios pulled her songs off the air, and every variety show she was scheduled to appear on was cancelled. To deal with the scandal, Ji-young first denied that she was the woman pictured in the video, but the public couldn't forgive her so easily. SBS did somehow manage to get a hold of Kim Si-won, Ji-young's manager, over the phone, even though he was deemed unreachable, where he confessed that the video was genuine and he was the guy in it. He said that the two were dating at the time of the filming, and he also had plans to marry her. According to Kim Si-won, the footage was shot in his office in October 1998, though he didn't give a reason why. He also told SBS viewers that Ji-young was aware that she was being filmed, claiming, "We watched it together afterward and enjoyed it." Some members of the public, even though small in number, seriously doubted that though, seeing as multiple times during the clip, he pulls down the sheets to make sure that the camera he set up gets a clear shot of Ji-young. He also shared that he didn't share the clip, though he failed to disclose who did. As to why he didn't delete the footage right away, especially knowing that Ji-young didn't consent to being filmed, Baek, a former sitcom writer, claimed that it's normal for managers and producers to make aspiring celebrities film such videos so that they can use it as blackmail in case the woman tries to dump them after she makes it big. The interview made everyone seek out the video, to the point that the South Korean Ministry of Information and Communication had to step in to stop distribution. At the time, Ji-young had to temporarily flee to Guam so she could escape all the harassment that she was getting from the media and the public over something that was done without her consent. The posts from netizens were also pretty unhinged, as they read, "Is Baek Jinyoung a call girl who gave up being a decent human being? But if Ji-young proved one thing, she is not one to be messed with and wouldn't just sit and take criticism over something that wasn't her fault in the first place." On November 29th, she held a press conference where she apologized for the incident. She sobbed and cried uncontrollably during the conference, but made sure to let everyone know that she was not the guilty party in the whole ordeal. She denounced her former manager and strongly denied the fact that she knew that she was being filmed. Ji-young also made it clear that she sees herself as the victim, which also made her hire a lawyer. She also vowed to continue singing "If a Single Fan Wants Me To" and said, "I decided to come forward to tell the truth to prevent other women from becoming victims like me." Her attorney, Choi Chong-hwan, also said, "I don't think she did anything wrong. Yes, public figures have to maintain a high moral standard, but we can't expect their moral standards to be higher than the general public." The interview caused another wave of uproar from the public, as they weren't used to women protecting their innocence so publicly. First and foremost, this incident brought to light the dark sides of the industry, which had higher-ups making up-and-coming idols and celebrities perform favors to move ahead in their career, and Ji-young's video was an example of this. The first half of the clip, which was apparently shot 2 years before the video saw the light, shows her nervously practicing imaginary media interviews under the direction of Kim Si-won. In the second half, they're seen having inappropriate relations. But this wasn't obvious to the public. A big chunk of public opinion believed that not only did Ji-young know that she was being filmed, but that the tape was her idea so that she could reach career peaks and blackmail the manager to her own advantage when necessary. And while Ji-young was shedding tears at her press conference, trying to prove that she was only a mere victim of the industry's dirty tactics to take advantage of young women, the man who caused her career to go downhill in a matter of seconds fled to the US, getting away with the scandal without a scratch while leaving Ji-young to deal with everything on her own. The fact that she was so determined in her fight against someone who had violated her trust and privacy made her the representative face of feminist movements in South Korea. She was also supported by different activist groups. The spokeswoman for the Women's Association, Park To-kyung, spoke up about the issue, standing beside Baek Jinyoung. She questioned society and said, "Why is it that women actresses and singers are expected to be squeaky clean while the same standards don't apply to their male counterparts?" Ji-young's attorney, Choi Chong-hwan, also called out the hypocrisy of the Korean society as he said, "Everybody criticized the couple for having filmed the video, but everyone was rushing to see it. If you hadn't seen the tape, you couldn't have a conversation with anyone in Seoul." Thankfully, according to a report from the Seoul District Prosecutor's Office from January 2001, it was proven that Ji-young wasn't at fault. They said that she was filmed without her knowledge in December 1998, and the video was distributed after she canceled her contract with her manager. The prosecutors suspected that the manager shared the video so he could earn money and get out of the financial difficulties. They also said that it was possible that the video was made to blackmail Jinyoung or to extort money from her. Based on their announcement, the manager went to the United States with his accomplices in November 2000 and sold the video for $20 on an internet site. However, despite the report and the support that she was getting, Jinyoung stayed hidden for the following 3 years. She did manage to make a successful comeback to the industry and amazed people with her heavenly vocals, sweeping award after award too, but the time that she stayed hidden was pretty hard according to her. On an episode of Stargazing, which aired in June of 2014, Jinyoung talked about a fan meeting that she held after the scandal. She talked about how difficult it was to deal with the scandal for her and her fans, saying that she held a fan meeting for the ones still standing beside her. She had to hold her fan meeting in a mountainous area, which was so dark that people couldn't see each other's faces without a cell phone light. She said, "At the time, I really wanted to do the fan meeting because I couldn't see my fans any other way. I couldn't hold the meeting openly because I didn't want other people to find out that the fans were my fans. I was worried that they would be criticized because of me." A longtime fan of hers who also appeared on the show added, "The fans didn't cry then. We all held it in. She acted so bright, so we couldn't cry. We all cried after she left." Jinyoung expressed her gratitude to her fans who stuck beside her through everything, saying that everyone who showed up gave her a lot of hope. The scandal thankfully ended on a happy note. Jinyoung built her name from scratch and now lives a happy life alongside her husband, Jong Soo-kwon. Her career also keeps thriving to this day, 24 years after her debut, as she's still known as one of the golden voices of South Korea. On the other hand, her perpetrator, Kim Si-won, was arrested in 2012 in Los Angeles as he had inappropriate relations with a minor and filmed the whole thing. He went to jail, and even though we don't know how long he served his sentence, it's pretty satisfactory that he got what he deserved for what he did to Baek Jinyoung. And when a fan crosses the line, the consequences can be horrifying. Mayu Tomita getting attacked by a psychotic fan and suffering dozens of wounds is one of the most extreme cases involving Sosang fans. Unfortunately, the police did absolutely nothing, leaving Mayu fearing for her life. At the time of the attack, Mayu Tomita was just 20 years old and she was already known in the entertainment industry. She was mainly known for her vibrant personality and her talent. Her first time on screen as an actress was in 2011 in a web drama called Secret Girls, and she also became a member of the girl group of the same name. They appeared at various music events and were always warmly welcomed by the public. Mayu then started slowly building a loyal following. While doing all of her singer and actress activities, Mayu was also a third-year student at Asia University where she was majoring in business, so she already had a lot on her plate, but her life was about to become much more difficult. It was May 21st, 2016, and Mayu was waiting to perform at a concert venue in Kogane, Tokyo. Mayu didn't get to step on the stage and perform that night because she was soon attacked by a man called Tomohiro Iwasaki. Tomohiro was 7 or 6 years older than Mayu, born in 1988 or 1989. He became a huge fan of Mayu after he saw some of her shows and fell for her charming personality. It seems like he fell too hard because it didn't take long for his admiration to turn into an obsession. Tomohiro had a tendency to become infatuated with celebrities, as he was once in love with model Ai Hashimoto, but lost interest in her after she publicly revealed that she regularly watched Japanese AVs. Tomohiro then went to his blog where he declared that women who watch or appear in such movies should end their lives. This comes off as very ironic considering Tomohiro appeared in an AV himself. Tomohiro was described as unskilled in expressing his emotions by his older brother, who added that he still had that gentle, childlike nature. According to his brother, Tomohiro didn't have a lot of friends that he would know of. As the obsessed fan that he was, Tomohiro spent most of his time declaring his love to Mayu, sending her gifts, and bombarding her with messages on social media. Before the attack took place, this was exactly what Mayu complained about to the police. Mayu reported that she had received around 140 messages from Tomohiro, including ones that threatened her life after she rejected his marriage proposal and decided to return the gifts that he sent her. Other sources say that the number of messages Mayu received from Tomohiro is even bigger, and that it was actually over 400. Even though Mayu blocked Tomohiro on Twitter, she still didn't feel safe enough, so she decided to report the incident to the police. That was 12 days before the attack. Mayu contacted the police station near her home in Musashino, Tokyo, fearing for her safety, but the police dismissed the case as they believed that hateful social media messages doesn't count as an immediate threat. Additionally, the anti-stalking laws in Japan didn't include harassment on social media at the time of Mayu's attack. The whole thing could have been easily prevented if the police did the right thing. It's truly baffling that the police didn't think the situation was serious, considering how vulgar and hateful Tomohiro's messages to Mayu were. Tomohiro decided to confront Mayu in person about the returned gifts. He waited for her by the venue where Mayu was scheduled to perform later that evening. Tomohiro asked her why she didn't accept the gifts that he gave her, but Mayu didn't give him a clear explanation. This drove Tomohiro over the edge and he completely lost control. When Mayu turned around, he pulled out a knife and stabbed her 61 times from behind, mainly in the chest and neck area. Eyewitnesses called the police and ambulance after they heard Mayu screaming for help. She was rushed to the hospital and Tomohiro was arrested at the scene. When Tomohiro was in police custody, he told them that he intended to get rid of Mayu and that the whole attack was premeditated. It was also revealed that when Mayu called the police before the attack, the emergency dispatcher sent the police officers to her home instead of sending them to her by tracing the location of her cell phone. While Tomohiro was being interrogated at the police station, Mayu was at the hospital in critical condition. Miraculously, Mayu didn't sustain any damage to her vital organs, but the injuries were so severe that she was in a coma for 2 weeks. The majority of her wounds were on Mayu's face, neck, back, and arms. Her left eye was injured as well, and she became partially blinded. For a long time, she couldn't use her fingers and was dependent on the help of others. Mayu regained consciousness in June of 2016, and even though her physical condition was slowly getting better, she was suffering mentally and still is to this day. After she was released from the hospital in September of 2016, Mayu's whole life was affected by post-traumatic stress disorder. In December of 2016, Mayu issued an indictment against the police who dismissed her concerns. Mayu accused the police of being unable to comprehend just how scared she was for her physical safety. Mayu said, "I explained every detail about the danger I felt at that time and also told the police officers about my worries and fear that I could be hurt." The 3 police officers Mayu spoke to prior to her attack allegedly had no recollection of Mayu mentioning her fear of possibly being attacked. Instead, they thought that Mayu only wanted them to somehow stop Tomohiro from harassing her online and felt like the Twitter messages couldn't count as an immediate threat. Through her lawyer, Mayu said, "Going even beyond anger, I only feel sadness. My attempt to plead my case in the most desperate way possible didn't get through." Although the police did end up apologizing at the end, their apology can't take away Mayu's pain and trauma. The police said, "It was a case in which the police should have judged it necessary to swiftly ensure her safety." On February 28th of 2017, Tomohiro was sentenced to 14 years and 6 months in prison. Before his sentencing, Tomohiro expressed deep regret over his actions. He said, "I'm really sorry for having caused great trouble to Miss Tomita and her family. I swear in this court that I will never go near Miss Tomita again." Public prosecutors wanted the sentence to be 17 years, claiming that he was relentless and brutal. On the other hand, Tomohiro's lawyers argued that the attack wasn't premeditated, but that it was a sudden spur-of-the-moment attack. When Mayu's injuries were being described in court, a lay judge actually fainted hearing the great pain that Mayu suffered. Mayu made her first public appearance since the attack when she went to testify in court. Her testimony said, "I want him to return the life that I was supposed to live. I want him to return my body without scars." She continued, "He is the kind of person who develops some feelings for someone without asking if they feel the same way and tries to hurt the person if things do not go according to his will." During her testimony, Mayu was hidden behind a partition that separated her from Tomohiro, who was later removed from the court because of inappropriate remarks that he made towards Mayu. In her testimony, Mayu touched on her suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. She shared, "When I was in the hospital, I would get scared looking at a pair of scissors which were kept for treatment, thinking I could be hurt with them. I could not help myself thinking people coming to visit me were there to hurt me. Such feelings continue even after I got discharged." What happened to Mayu led to a good change, because soon after, Japan decided to tighten their anti-stalking laws and included threatening text messages and online comments as a form of stalking. At that time, stalking was a growing problem in Japan. In 2011, it was reported that the police received around 14,600 reports about stalking, but only made 351 arrests. In 2017, the number almost doubled as the number of reports climbed to 23,079 and the number of arrests rose to 926. There seems to be a bigger problem though, and many people point to the issues with gender inequality in Japan. In 2018, Japan ranked 110th out of 149 countries, being one of the lowest ranked countries in the East Asia and Pacific region. Somehow, it got even worse over the years. In 2021, Japan ranked 120th, and in 2022, the country ranked 116th. Following Mayu's attack, more Japanese idols decided to speak out on their experiences with stalking, hoping to raise awareness. Earlier in 2019, Maho Yamaguchi, a former member of the Japanese idol group NGT48, revealed that she was harassed by 2 male fans in December of 2018 after her address was leaked online. The 2 men were arrested, but later they were released. In 2014, an obsessive fan attacked 2 members of the group AKB48 with an actual saw. It's not only idols that experience stalking, of course, but it's important for someone powerful to share their experiences so the quote-unquote ordinary people with the same experiences can feel empowered to come forward and share their stories. A cultural studies expert, Cookie Chu, said this about Yamaguchi's decision to talk about her attack. "If someone powerful has a hard time coming out, the average woman in Japan thinks, what chance do I have? But idols are very relatable. This incident could help other young women to think, if she came out, then I can come out too. In 2019, Mayu decided to seek compensation from the Tokyo Metropolitan Government worth around $954,000, as well as from her attacker and her previous management agency, which, according to Mayu, didn't do enough to protect her. The lawsuit is currently ongoing, and it isn't known if Mayu is ever going to return back to the industry. But even when the attacker isn't a stranger, the ending can be just as tragic. The passing of Kim Sungjae raises a wave of questions even 26 years after it happened. A tragedy in its true meaning, Kim Sungjae's life was cut short out of nowhere, seemingly for no reason. As we dive deeper into the case, it becomes more and more apparent who is responsible for his unexpected farewell. But even after 2 decades, there still hasn't been any justice served, and that's the reason why this case is so twisted. Before we get into what really happened between November 19th and November 20th in 1995, let's talk about Kim Sungjae and what he achieved through his short but successful life and why this case was so big. Sungjae was born on April 18th, 1972, and he got everything that it takes to be a true all-rounder in K-pop. Not only was he a great singer and rapper, he had developed some incredible dancing skills too, and he was also a part-time model, which isn't surprising considering how great he looked. Sungjae shone the most as a member of Deuce, a first-generation K-pop and hip-hop group that gained the most success and prominence in the early 90s. Deuce consisted of Kim Sungjae and Lee Hyun-do, and they debuted in 1993. Deuce was considered to be one of the most influential groups of the 90s. Not only did they introduce hip-hop music to the Korean audience, they also attracted a lot of attention because of their dance and style. Their fan base was growing each day, and they were on their way to become the biggest K-pop act of that era. Unfortunately, in 1995, Deuce suddenly disbanded as the members couldn't agree artistically anymore and decided to pursue solo careers instead. Sungjae made his solo debut on November 19th, 1995 by releasing the song As I Told You. I'm sure many of you might know this song because a lot of K-pop groups have covered this song at some point in their careers. The most prominent cover of As I Told You is the one BTS did in 2016. For most idols, their debut day is the happiest of their lives. For Kim Sungjae though, this day would become his last. Life cut short. Kim Sungjae had his solo debut with As I Told You at Music Bank on November 19th, 1995. As told by Greasy TV on YouTube, he arrived at a hotel along with his manager, 2 foreign backup dancers, 4 Korean backup dancers, and lastly, his girlfriend. When these people were interrogated later on, they all claimed that they just hung out in the common room and had a couple of beers together. After a while, around 1 a.m., all the backup dancers called it a night and went to their respective rooms. Sungjae's manager also decided to head to bed, so then it was only Kim Sungjae and his girlfriend left alone in the living room. There's an important fact to remember that will explain a lot of things later in the story. It's known that before the manager went to sleep, he turned on the dryer. Now, this type of dryer will automatically turn off after 2 hours and 15 minutes. Around 6 a.m., the manager went to the living room and saw Kim Sungjae still asleep on the couch, or so he thought. At first, after the manager tried to wake him up and failed, the manager didn't think much of it. It could have been because the singer had been preparing for his solo stage extremely hard and was just exhausted, right? Well, not really. The manager tried to wake him up again, and this time, he started to think that something was wrong. That's when the manager also realized the dryer was still running, even though it should have stopped around 3 a.m. The manager went back to check on the singer once again, and that's when he realized that the singer wasn't breathing, it was unresponsive. On November 20th, Kim Sungjae was pronounced. Mind you, he was just 23 years old. But what truly happened? Did he pass away naturally, or was it under the hands of someone else? That's where things get messy. All signs point to her. At first, Sungjae's passing was ruled as cardiac arrest. Since he had a pretty large fan base, rumors started to spread around quickly. Some people claimed that the singer was actually addicted to substances and he simply overdosed, which was following the rumors about the singer being a drug addict from the beginning of his career. There have even been rumors that Kim Sungjae took his own life, but this has quickly been proven as false. According to the singer's mother, Kim Sungjae was really excited about his solo career. He had good connections with his friends and family and even promised to his mother to see her after he debuts. Of course, it's still possible for a person to take their own life even though they seem perfectly fine, but this wasn't Kim Sungjae's case. Then the results of the autopsy and toxicology report came in. Kim Sungjae had 28 needle marks in his right arm. This could still mean that Kim Sungjae overdosed, right? But he didn't. The toxicology report took a while to arrive because the professionals couldn't identify the substance substance in his body. After a while, it was revealed that animal sedatives such as animal anesthesia and animal euthanizer were the unknown substances. It's also rumored that the reason why the toxicology report took a while longer to be done than the autopsy is because it was actually the first time someone had been killed by the usage of animal sedatives and animal euthanizer in South Korea. Now it was obvious that Sungjae didn't pass away due to natural reasons. So who was the one behind it? Well, there's only one person that was with the singer at the time of his last breath. Because of the placement of the needle shots in Kim Sungjae's arms, it was obvious that someone had to inject those needles into him. It would be really tricky and difficult for Kim Sungjae to do it to himself, mainly because he was right-handed and usually your opposite hand is the weaker one. It would be hard for him to find the right veins to inject the substances into as well. But do you know who was very skilled with needles? Kim Sungjae's girlfriend. To this day, we don't know what her name is for sure, although it was speculated her name could be Kim Yoo-sun. It's reported that his girlfriend was a medical student, so she must have had a good knowledge of the human body, which would also explain the 28 needle marks, as she was likely aware that she needed to inject little by little since substances like these can clog up the human veins. A witness later came in to report that they sold Sungjae's girlfriend those animal sedatives and euthanizer. This witness also shared that Sungjae's girlfriend told them not to tell the police she bought those drugs from them if they ever asked. This is going to sound insane, but allegedly his girlfriend previously killed her own dog and replaced it with the same breed to see if those drugs really work. She sounds like a psychopath, which she might as well be considering the way she acted towards Kim Sungjae throughout their relationship. It has been reported by many people that Sungjae and his girlfriend had a pretty rocky relationship. At some point, she allegedly went on stage during one of his concerts and screamed at the fans, "Leave my boyfriend alone." Whenever Sungjae's fans would approach him, his girlfriend would throw a fit and would do everything she could to stop them. His girlfriend was also a borderline stalker, as she always contacted his friends to find out what Sungjae was doing. She also apparently fired a gas gun towards Kim Sungjae's face and actually shot him the night before he was supposed to leave for the US. On one instance, Sungjae allegedly got really drunk and his girlfriend got mad at him for drinking, and so while he was sleeping, she actually tied him to the bed with duct tape. It was also said that Sungjae actually broke up with his girlfriend before he went to the US, so maybe she did all of this to get back at him for breaking her heart? Now let's talk about the dryer again. Remember how the manager noticed the dryer was still running at 6 a.m. even though it should have stopped sometime around 3 a.m.? Well, it's believed that before Sungjae's girlfriend left the hotel room at 3:30 a.m., she turned the dryer on. No one knows why, but investigators had played with the possibility of her turning it on to drown out any sounds as she mercilessly took Sungjae's life. I've already mentioned before that the cause of the passing was concluded as cardiac arrest. At some point, although it's not clear when or why, his autopsy was changed and the cause of the passing was concluded as something else because once all the evidence started to pop up, his girlfriend actually went and requested for the cause of passing to be changed back to cardiac arrest. Allegedly, she also tried to bribe the police with money to stop them from examining Sungjae's body completely. Definitely suspicious. The police also did a really bad job at investigating the crime scene and looking for more clues. There was CCTV around the hotel, but the police made zero effort to check the footage. When Sungjae's mother was asked to come and identify the body, she noticed something that didn't sit right with her. She said that no matter the time or place, Sungjae always took off his makeup before going to sleep. But when she went to identify him, she noticed that his hair was still done and he still had a lot of makeup on. This seemingly unimportant detail defines the timeline of Sungjae's passing a little more. There's a high chance that Sungjae was attacked before he even managed to go to bed. Sungjae's girlfriend didn't even try hard enough to hide any evidence, and so it came as no surprise that at first, she was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Kim Sungjae, though no one was prepared for what came next. The unexpected twist. During the first trial, the girlfriend was sentenced to life in prison, but that would soon change. Over the course of the second and third trial, his girlfriend was actually found not guilty. Despite all the evidence pointing towards her, the court said that there was actually a lack of evidence that would directly point towards Sungjae's girlfriend. How could they possibly think that it was someone else when she was the one who purchased those sedatives, not to mention that she was a medical student and she was so possessive over him? She was really like, if I can't have him, then no one can. But unfortunately, she took it too far. The court also argued that the amount of the sedative she purchased was not actually enough to kill Sungjae. The witness, who at first reported that they sold the sedatives to Sungjae's girlfriend, later changed their testimony and claimed that they actually didn't remember anything. The reason why it suddenly took such a sudden and strange turn could be the background of Sungjae's girlfriend. Apparently, someone in her family had a political background, and although it's not known who exactly, it wouldn't be that strange for her to pay her lawyers, the officials, and even the court to overturn the verdict. it wouldn't be the first time someone used their wealth and power to their advantage so they didn't have to face the consequences of their actions. Her lawyer also argued that she did indeed buy those animal sedatives, but they were for her own use as she intended to take her own life, but decided not to go through with it at the last second. I mean, this just sounds super sketchy. Their relationship was also painted in a completely different light. Apparently, they were super happy together and there was no conflict going on between them. Her defense team also tried to throw the blame on one of the foreign backup dancers. Their story was that one of the dancers felt negative emotions towards Sungjae and they just couldn't hold in their anger anymore. It does look a little suspicious considering that they allegedly left to go back to the States just a day after, but there's still way more evidence pointing towards the girlfriend than to the backup dancers. What's also incredibly frustrating about this whole case is the way that the law system works in South Korea. If a person had been previously charged but later was acquitted, they cannot be charged again even if they are found guilty after some time. Obviously, Sungjae's passing made headlines all over South Korea and a lot of people were absolutely devastated. Understandably so, especially when in the end no one seemed to be responsible for his death. After some time, Sungjae's case went cold and it would always pop up just for a little while. That was until 2019, when the woman who Sungjae once called his girlfriend started to look even more suspicious. Fighting for justice. Fast forward to the present. It's said that Sungjae's girlfriend changed her name and underwent numerous plastic surgeries to change her appearance. She's also been working at a dentist clinic along with her husband and is living lavishly, while Sungjae's family, and especially his brother, are still fighting to get Sungjae the justice he deserves. Back in December of 2019, an episode of SBS's Unanswered Questions regarding Sungjae's passing was supposed to air. Turns out a court order actually prevented the broadcast from airing. Sungjae's brother, Kim Sung-wook, shared, "I don't understand the court's decision. We don't want to punish anyone, but want to know the truth about what happened that day. The biggest reason is that my mom should know the truth about what happened. It's her only wish." Kim Sung-wook has been fighting for his brother ever since Sungjae passed, and it doesn't seem like he will ever stop, even though everything has seemed to be against him. The reason why the episode about Sungjae wasn't aired is because of Sungjae's girlfriend, now going by Mrs. Kim, filed a provisional injunction to forbid the broadcast. Back then, the court ruled, "It is difficult to say that this is a broadcast made solely for the public interest. There is a risk that it could cause irreparable damage to Mrs. Kim's character and honor." The production staff of Unanswered Questions expressed their deep regret at the ban, but complied with the court ruling nonetheless. There wasn't much that they could do anyways. The production staff said, "This episode tackled an unsolved case that has many unanswered questions and in which the public has a high level of interest. It was an opportunity to interview experts of newly developed scientific techniques that may have shed some light on the case, and we spent 5 months researching and collecting material for the story." Skipping a few months to December of 2019, SBS tried to air the episode of Unanswered Questions once again, but was blocked from doing so for the second time, and it was once again because of Mrs. Kim. The court accepted Mrs. Kim's request for injunction and said, "The previous broadcast and this broadcast differ in reasoning only, but in the end they both suggest that the filer of the injunction might have committed." The court also determined that the broadcast contains information which hasn't been confirmed, such as that Mrs. Kim injected Sungjae with magnesium sulfate and that she has actually purchased more of the animal sedatives than it was said before. Unanswered Questions responded to the court ruling, "We respect the decision of the court, but we are deeply frustrated. So long as we continue to receive information on the case, we will continue to look further into the matter." My heart goes out to Sungjae's family, who have been looking for answers for 26 years without much success. It must be incredibly hard to not know what happened to their beloved son and brother. While it's understandable that SBS had to follow the court ruling, it's obvious that Mrs. Kim doesn't want the episode to air because the world will probably learn the full truth. And now that she's basically built a completely new life for her, she wouldn't want that taken away from her, would she? Lee Hyun-do, a person who made Deuce Complete, shared a story about Kim Sungjae on a broadcast one day. He started off by saying that he and Sungjae fought a lot before Sungjae left the US to have his solo debut stage in Korea. According to Hyun-do, as Sungjae was leaving, he gave him a smile, bid him goodbye, and gave his hand for a handshake. Hyun-do didn't take it. On that day, Hyun-do had a strange dream where he and Sungjae had just finished a schedule and had many fans approaching them with flowers. What Hyun-do found weird was that all the fans went to Hyun-do and gave their flowers to him. No one went to Sungjae, who could only smile at them from afar. When Hyun-do went to him and gave him some flowers, Sungjae only said, "It's okay, I'm gonna get tons of flowers tomorrow." This story gives me the chills. But grief has a way of destroying more than one life at a time. One idol who suffered a lot because of an unspeakable tragedy is son Hoyoung, a member of the legendary group G.O.D., who later embarked on a solo career. Hoyoung's life completely changed on May 21st, 2013, when the lifeless body of his girlfriend was discovered in his car. According to the police report on the incident, Hoyoung's vehicle was found parked illegally in Gangnam, and a tow truck came to remove the car. However, the driver of the tow truck noticed the lifeless body of a woman inside the vehicle and immediately called the police. After arriving at the scene, the police found a used briquette, an empty bottle of sleeping pills, and a note inside the car, and these elements instantly suggested that the woman had taken her own life. 2 days after the body was found, the police revealed the preliminary results of the autopsy, which confirmed that the woman had passed away because of gas poisoning with no external involvement. They also revealed the contents of the note left by the woman, stating that it contained information about the woman's debts and self-pessimistic messages, along with the phrase, "I feel disappointed" by son Hoyoung. These elements allowed the police to confirm that the woman had taken her own life, as they initially suspected. As soon as the body was discovered, Hoyoung was summoned by the police and was then interrogated for 2 hours. According to Hoyoung's legal representatives, he had been in a serious relationship with the woman, a non-celebrity, for about a year, and he only learned about her passing when he received a call from the police. They also added that the car in which the body was found was indeed Hoyoung's personal vehicle, and he used it mostly for his work activities, but he also often lent it to his girlfriend for driving practice purposes. Hoyoung's representatives admitted that in the previous weeks he had been very busy preparing for his upcoming album, and this caused him to have some arguments with his girlfriend, but added that the disagreements weren't so serious to suggest that the woman would take such a drastic decision. Meanwhile, there were contrasting reports about Hoyoung's relationship with his girlfriend's family. Some news outlets reported that Hoyoung was offering condolences to them at the woman's funeral, while others stated that the family of the deceased yelled and showed anger at him while he was being questioned by the police. In any case, this horrible news immediately made headlines throughout the Korean entertainment world, and netizens were absolutely shocked. Many felt sad and heartbroken, and some wished that Hoyoung could get some time off to mourn in peace, worrying for his health. However, others started to accuse him of causing the passing of his girlfriend, and this deeply impacted his already struggling mental health. Hoyoung canceled all his activities following the incident, and he was reported to be in an extreme state of shock, as he apparently had no prior knowledge or hints that something this horrible could happen. Instead of recovering, things only got worse for Hoyoung, and on May 24th, it was reported that he had been rushed to the hospital after apparently attempting to take his own life. According to the police, in the early morning of May 24th, Hoyoung parked his car in a public parking lot and apparently lit a coal briquette, intending to take his own life by gas poisoning, copying exactly what his girlfriend had done just a few days earlier. However, the interior of the car caught fire, and Hoyoung managed to jump out of the burning vehicle before it was too late. A passerby who saw the burning car called the firefighters, and Hoyoung was then taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Meanwhile, Hoyoung's agency confirmed that he was being hospitalized for a few days, and added that although his physical health wasn't too damaged, his mental state was extremely fragile. This unexpected development shocked netizens even more, and numerous reporters rushed to the hospital where Hoyoung was being treated to learn more about what was going on. However, the crowd of journalists ended up causing an awful scene at the hospital. When the hospital staff was preparing to move Hoyoung from one room to another, reporters ran to get closer and take a photo of him. Doctors and nurses tried to yell their way through the crowd, but when Hoyoung actually appeared, wheeled in on a hospital bed with a blanket covering his face, the reporters scrambled in a mad rush. The hospital staff was overwhelmed, and Hoyoung's manager, who was also at the scene, finally broke down in tears and sobbed as he begged journalists to move away and let Hoyoung through. This awful moment added another level of sadness to the situation, and netizens were appalled by how insensitive the reporters were towards Hoyoung, with some asking how the police could allow so many journalists to enter a hospital. Meanwhile, fans and colleagues of Hoyoung became more vocal in their support. GOD member Danny An revealed on May 25th that he had visited Hoyoung at the hospital and asked everyone to pray for him. Another GOD member, June Park, echoed this sentiment, saying that he was heartbroken by what was happening to Hoyoung and told fans to pray for his health. Over the following days, Hoyoung started to recover, but it was slower than expected. He was initially supposed to stay at the hospital for around 3 days, but by May 30th, he was still hospitalized, although he had been moved from the intensive care unit into a regular room. By this point, he was still suffering from severe burns, as well as the consequences of inhaling gas and taking several sleeping pills, while the emotional scars were even deeper than his physical injuries. Also, according to sources close to Hoyoung, he would have to take a long break from any activity even after his recovery, as he would be closely monitored to make sure that he wouldn't try to take his own life again. Hoyoung was finally released from the hospital on June 1st, and he began his resting period at home with his father, while all his activities were cancelled and his upcoming album was indefinitely postponed. 1 month later, a representative of Hoyoung's agency gave some updates on his condition. Hoyoung apparently spent a lot of time confined in his home, and only after a few weeks he started to go out hiking mountains around Seoul with his father while he tried to get back on his feet. He reportedly decided to go on hikes as a way to let go of his thoughts, while strengthening the mind and body and reflecting on the past. released. However, the manager stated that it would still take a long time before Hoyoung is fully recovered. At the same time, Hoyoung was also charged by the police for setting a car on fire while attempting to take his own life, but the prosecution ultimately dropped the charges, arguing that the vehicle caught fire by mistake. Over the course of the following months, Hoyoung disappeared from the entertainment world, and he reportedly decided to live an ordinary life with no discussion about returning to his activities. Nevertheless, in September, his agency stated that he would make his return soon. Hoyoung finally returned to the entertainment industry in March 2014, when it was revealed that he would join the new reality show Share House while more public appearances were being planned. That July, Hoyoung took part in the long-awaited GOD reunion, so he was able to return to his music career too. However, just as GOD was preparing for their comeback, it was revealed that Hoyoung was under investigation for the unauthorized use of a sleep-inducing pill that's often used to cure insomnia. This substance must be prescribed by a physician and has a lot of side effects, including hallucinations. According to prosecutors, Hoyoung had taken several of these pills when he tried to take his own life, and they wanted to investigate whether he continued to take them after the incident. In the end, no evidence was found, and Hoyoung was cleared of the accusations. In December 2014, Hoyoung finally spoke about the toughest moment of his life when he tried to end it all. He confessed that he had been struggling with his mental health for years, and the fact that fans and journalists were so obsessed with his physique made him wonder if anyone actually cared about him. He shared that he often felt lonely, and the only person who was there for him was his girlfriend. So when she passed away, he became hopeless and decided to end it. However, when he opened his eyes in the hospital, he was happy to be still alive and immediately thought that GOD was the thing he was missing the most, so he started to think about reuniting the group. In the end, Hoyoung was able to make a full recovery and return to all his activities, while his postponed solo album was finally released in May 2016.